And what's it like to be a conservative working at the New York Times?
I mean, it's terrific. I get the chance to write for people who disagree with me, right? And isn't that what every op-ed columnist wants? You're trying to change minds, persuade people, and I get to do it twice a week. And as you can tell, I'm persuading people. I've changed minds, right? Just in my time at the New York Times, American liberalism has moved rapidly towards becoming anti-abortion, towards skepticism of big government. I've had an immense impact, and I'm very proud of myself. But no, I mean, I'm obviously kidding about the second part, but I do think it's a gift to get to write for a newspaper that does, as the stereotypes suggest, but they're correct. Our audience is predominantly liberal. And sometimes it's a little stressful and exhausting, and I get, dragged on Twitter, as everyone does, from time to time. But the Times in general, I think I've been there for 10 years, 11 years? I've been there for a long time, amazingly. And I think sometimes, I'll get questions from conservatives like, do they hang you in a birdcage in the office and pelt you with rotting fruit and so on? And in fact, my experience of working there and being edited there has always been excellent. And, to the extent that sort of I watch what I say, it's not because anyone's looking over my shoulder. It's just because I'm sort of aware that I am writing for people I disagree with, and I'm trying to be as persuasive as possible.
So in that context, what do you make of a lot of the conservative critiques of the so-called mainstream media, the accusations that places like the Times are wildly biased to the left, or as President Trump puts it, the failing New York Times, and how it's fake news? How do you deal with that being sort of inside the house there?
I mean, I think that the basic conservative critique of the mainstream media is right in the sense that the media has institutions, elite newspapers are primarily staffed by people who vote for Democratic politicians and candidates. And it's not a conspiracy, it's just the function of the fact that journalism has become an upper middle class, elite college educated profession. And people who come out of those colleges, as I did once upon a time, tend to be overwhelmingly liberal. And then there are also some other, I think, sort of psychological reasons why the kind of sort of mental makeup that a lot of reporters have biases them maybe a little bit against sort of traditionalism and towards an ideology of sort of newness, novelty, progressivism, and so on. But yeah, I mean, that's just a reality that inevitably, I think, informs the way that the news gets made. And I think people at places like the Times and, the Washington Post and Politico and so on are aware of that. And, there is an actual attempt to sort of try and correct for those biases. And it just doesn't always work, right? So, I'll read things in my own paper that I feel like are inflected with too much liberal bias. That obviously happens. At the same time, what I say to conservatives is, you don't have to like the editorials that the New York Times runs. You're obviously going to disagree with most of them, and you're going to see sort of, things that seem like bias creep in. But there are things the New York Times does that nobody else does. And especially in an era when most newspapers have shrunk or declined. Nobody covers sort of the breadth of the news, national and international, the way the Times does. Nobody, we're talking about the coronavirus, nobody has been covering what's been going on in China, long before it came here, like the Times does. Nobody has the resources, nobody has the talent, nobody has the reporters. And I think for conservatives who are interested in sort of, encountering the world as it actually is, the biases that creep into mainstream media coverage are not a reason not to read the Times. You just have to be aware that, that isn't maybe the only newspaper that you should read. But you should certainly read it and subscribe.
And I generally have the same take. I do tell people that they should read the New York Times. They should just understand that what they're reading is going to be inflected in a particular way. I'm not going to make you answer for all the decisions of the editorial board of the New York Times. Obviously, I think one of the...
I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all our future content.